If there's one thing we've learned about business and life, it's that people are the X factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syya, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bytes podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bytes. I'm Ben, this is Syya, and here's this week's question. How are you managing a crisis? A crisis could be anything. It could be your CEO fell out of an airplane, a helicopter crash. It could be a skiing accident. It could be a fire. It could be the fact that your server crashes. It could be one of your key employees got up without telling anybody and just left in the middle of the night and took all their clients with them. A crisis doesn't have to be enormous. It doesn't have to be catastrophic. It just has to be something that is going to impact you and your business. And the question is, how do you deal with it? Because every crisis has a solution. Every problem is fixable. The question is how, where, and why, and how creative can you be to be able to make it? We all need to be resilient. We all need to be adaptive. We all need to be creative. We all need to be able to sit there and say, okay, that happened. What do we do next? How do we articulate it? How do we make sure that the right people know what needs to happen next? Align people with the direction and push forward. Syya, let's know on this.
Oh, man. I don't know. I was struggling with the soundboard today. I like what you just said. I think we're done. Bye, guys. There's another great episode of Gnaw on This. Hey, look. Where my brain is going right now, which is kind of funny. What are we talking about again?
Crisis.
Oh, yeah.
Crisis.
I'm in a crisis right now.
You are in a crisis right now.
I am in crisis because I completely just brain farted. I literally had something I wanted to say, and then I distracted myself with my applause. I squirreled myself, Ben. I squirreled myself.
Well,
no, that is right there a typical example of how many times have you walked into a room and said, what am I in here for? Right? And a lot of times that happens because our brains are going way faster than we are consciously acknowledging at times. So you're going a lot of different places. And I feel like when you're under duress like that, you overlook details and you attach an emotion to it. And I think with what you were talking about is how do people handle crisis situations? You're going to get the fight, you get the flight, and you get the what the hell just happened people who just stand there and stare at the dumbass smile on their face. Like what happened? Just what happened, peoples, right? So maybe because I have a theory on this, and maybe because I don't feel like I have a fear chip. I don't have a fear chip, and I think that's more of a brain thing than me consciously saying. Because the idea of jumping out of a plane. I mean, I've stood up on top of Sears Tower on that little glass thing.
Yeah,
zero fear. Like, to me, I'm like, it's going to hold you guys. Insurance is going to be insane if I freaking fell off. So, you're on a roller coaster. I'm going to go on that roller coaster. The odds of it, like, I also understand risk. Would I do that kind of, ride of a traveling carnival? Hell no. But, like, a Disney World type situation, yeah, I would have faith that there's safety mechanisms in place, right?
Yeah.
So, I wonder, for those that do struggle with crisis, who struggle with, oh my God, I am down and out for whatever reason in life, whatever it is. I wonder how much of it is fear of overcoming it by effort. Meaning, if I tried to do something to overcome whatever obstacle I have and I fail at it, is that yet another reason for me not to do it because I'm just going to fail, and that fear of failure is worse than the crisis itself. So that's where my brain's going. And yeah, I would challenge and I would love to see you guys, audience. Let me ask you guys, like, is that the reason why we have crisis the way it is because we have that fear analysis paralysis situation? I don't know.
Let's get a thumbs up, or a heart if you guys are sitting there going, "Yep, I totally and absolutely identify with this." I mean, I am sure there is a vast majority of people out there that are afraid that they're not going to be able to recover. They're afraid of what's next. They're afraid of the unknown, and therefore it leads to analysis paralysis. I teach my clients, and I do a lot of work with crisis management. I've actually written a book called Leading Beyond a Crisis, a conversation about what's next. And, the first thing you need to do is you need to be prepared for the crises that never come. If we as organizations, as people, have an idea, even if it's just the basics, okay, if something happens in our company, do I have the phone numbers at my fingertips of all the people, the key players are thing in one WhatsApp group, one text group, one whatever group, that I can sit there at a moment's notice, be able to get a hold of all key players within our organization and be able to get a hold of them immediately and have that sitting there just on your phone. That helps, because all of a sudden you're not sitting there going, okay, what's the name of all the people on the board of directors? Okay, what's their phone number? Okay, now I got to go looking. Boom! You just say you have crisis hotline. You have you name the group whatever you want to name it, but you know that it's there on your phone, so you can have it. So you're not reliant on company email. You're not relying on company servers. You're not relying on anything that is internal to be able to get in touch with the people that you need to get a hold of when you need to get a hold of them. And be able to have key people within that group, being able to have a crisis management plan. Who speaks for the company? What's the policy? Who speaks for the company? If this person's unavailable, who's next to speak for the company? What's the decision-making tree? There are little things that you can do along the way to make sure that everybody within the management team understands what needs to happen when, and all those people have groups of people underneath them that they can create a phone tree and say, hey, wait a second here, don't everybody come into the office today, the building just blew up. We had a fire, and all of a sudden that really explosive stuff that we had sitting in the corner,
It finally exploded.
It finally exploded. So we need to be able to have the what if mindset. So hopefully it never happens. Hopefully we never have to worry about it. But what you'd have to do is once a year be able to sit there and say, is this data still available? Are these people still available? Have they changed their cell phone plans? Are new people involved? Have we got everybody? Do we have everybody we need to do? Are there people we need to take off this list because they're no longer relevant? And look at things like that and sit there and say, okay, what are the things that we've seen elsewhere? What are the things we've seen other people do? Or what are the crises that we've seen elsewhere that we can put mitigating plans in place? And I think that the more we can plan, the more we can prepare. We're never going to get every scenario. There's no way we can ever plan for every scenario. It's impossible. But if we can have some structure and some process in place where people know, okay, stuff has hit the fan, this is what we do first.
So what I'm hearing you is it's process, right?
Absolutely.
So basically it's risk management, and you have to have some kind of protocols put in place such that whatever segment of the industry and world that you're in, there's got to be something there that the order of operations. There's got to be some kind of manual that's put together, and it doesn't matter what size organization it is. And it's funny, you got me thinking, because you're thinking in corporate and I'm thinking in small business mindset, but it still applies,
still applies at 5 people.
It still applies, and it could be something as hella basic as just a 1-page sheet of like in the event you forget to not turn off the equipment, or here's a checklist of what you should do, if something goes wrong. I can't tell you how many times from a just pure production perspective where crisis would be and have been averted had I just followed the process on the order of operations of things. Because
Oh, yeah.
all applications have their own funkiness on things. Maybe your machinery or equipment that you're using might be slightly dated, so there's you gotta kick it on the side at a 45-degree angle, just at 2 pounds per pressure, just to get it right. But it works, right? There's those funky things. Maybe it's just a one pager. So let me ask you this. So when you've worked with clients, and it could be a small, medium size, or a big
Yeah.
enterprise, what was the first thing that you say, okay, guys, here's step one? Because I feel like when you talk about crisis in general, I feel like there's people lead with some kind of what is that and what would you recommend to address that first moment where there is a situation?
I mean, the first thing I do is we create a whiteboard situation and say, what are the things that could go wrong in this organization? And create a list and say, all right, what are the top 10 things that are possible and likely? We could have a water leak. All right. Does everybody know where the main water shutoff is? Does everybody know where the main electrical shutoff is? For a small organization, or for everybody on the floor, that everybody knows where the water shutoff is and everybody knows where the power shutoff is. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
It all depends if we're dealing with safety from a floor level, or if we're dealing safety from an enterprise level, a crisis from because you're going to have different sets of plans for floor level crises versus enterprise level crises. I mean, think about how many companies all of a sudden their entire day got put on hold when the two towers went down in 9/11, and all of a sudden their servers were in the same building as their offices. I mean, the number one thing I tell people says you better have a third party external source that is continually backing up all your data in a way that it's probably in 5 different locations. It doesn't matter if it's an AWS or something along those lines, just so, God forbid, somebody can go grab a brand new laptop from Best Buy, go to a coffee shop, log into a secure access, and be able to get things back up and running if necessary.
Do you think people plan for crisis enough?
I think that most companies don't. I think most companies do not. The larger companies have crisis departments. Once you're up in an enterprise level companies, I will guarantee you, Disney for one has an entire manual or a series of manuals of what happens during a crisis. Remember what happened in Fukushima in Japan? They had an entire plans put together of what could happen if there was a crisis that was going to impact all their guests. And those are the things you need to think about. Is it just employees that we're worried about, or employees and guests? And wait a second, how do we make sure that we know exactly who's in the office and who's not in the office that day? How do we make sure we have a head count? So
you reminded me of, and I know I've got Disney on the brain, but it was an interesting thing. This is we're totally dating ourselves, but this is Disneyland. And do you guys remember the Rodney what's his name, riots, in LA?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
was it after OJ, or was it before OJ? Either way, it was before OJ. And I thought it was really interesting because what's it?
Rodney King riots.
Rodney King, that's right. And it was fascinating to me because the riots were in LA, but Disney had already put together, we knew, because I remember being on shift and they're like, hey, if this thing spreads, here are the steps that we're taking, blah, blah, blah. Your safety is, paramount. Our guests, safety is paramount. And it was interesting because truthfully, if you knew Southern California, the distance between LA County and Orange County is significant. So if the
Oh,
riots
it
were going
is.
down, that's a revolution. Like, I mean, seriously, if riots were like breaking out or whatever, it was, to me, it was like, it was going to be a revolution, like legit. But I thought it was interesting. They had already like things
A
in play,
plan,
which I didn't even
just
know
in case.
existed. I was like, oh snap. Like this is, and I think preparedness really matters. And I think that's small or large business. I think have some kind of something prepared and ready to go. I think now you're making me think of like, crap, now I've got work to do for my own darn business, but I think it
That's right.
makes sense.
I mean, it's little things, and we're going to land the plane because I think we're about ready to land the plane. But if go back to Disney, Disney has got throughout the entire park lightning rods everywhere.
Oh yeah.
There's lightning rods everywhere. And those little things that the guests will never see. They will never see, but it protects every single person on site.
Yeah.
And there's 1,000 other little things that companies do to be able to sit there and say, how do we mitigate risk? And how do we make sure we can communicate through risk? How can we make sure we can move people through risk? How do we make sure that we can make sure that systems, processes, and procedures, continue during risk? And it's about communicating in such a way to sit there and say, okay, what could go wrong? How do we deal with it? And having people that can lead through crisis, that are going to be able to sit there and say, okay, I may not have all the answers, but I have enough policies and procedures that I understand to sit there and say, okay, these are the things I need to keep in mind as we're working through whatever particular thing we're working on.
Oh, I love it.
So let's leave it there. I'm Ben.
I'm Syya.
And we'll see you soon.
Hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Not On This, Business Bytes. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. If you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at iambenbaker.com or me at brilliantbeemedia.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through digital content and podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. See you next week for another episode of Gnaw on This, Business Bytes.